Tonight we have special guest Alex LeFontaine, and we are doing demonology for the month of September. Alex?
Yeah.
Would you like to say hello?
Hello, everyone.
Okay. Well, we're going to go ahead and get started off right into the mix. Alex, what do you like the very most about the fringe sciences?
Probably how diverse it is. Very, very broad field.
Right. Okay, and what do you like the least about it?
I would have to say probably how much influence the media has had on it.
Right. Absolutely.
Kind of made everything into a problem.
Right. Where every bump in the night is a demon and every piled stone is a Blair Witch, right?
Yeah, pretty much nowadays.
I know. I know that on our NPS members page on Facebook, one of the major topics that we go through every day, are orbs and, we basically poor photo quality, which leads to a lot of people to pareidolia. And the mind can play a lot of tricks on people and make them think of things, that their mind is sitting there trying to make sense. And if it's something that they don't understand or frighten them, a lot of novices will go ahead and immediately throw out the word demon. And in my personal experience, I think it's an incredible disservice because immediately, you have those extremists that go into fear-mongering. And then you have the skeptics who just aren't going to budge. There's very little balance there, and it seems to be a very ardent and deliberate effort, for the research and investigation. And, I have never, honestly, in all the time I've been investigating, had anybody just immediately come out and establish that it was a demonic case. You know what I mean? There were certain steps to establish those parameters. And with you being a Christian demonologist, I'm sure that you run into the same thing very often. Now, this week, this first week of September, we were focusing on demonology as a subject, and you were submitting articles. And the very first article that you submitted to was about infestation. Can you go ahead and elaborate a little bit on that for me?
Well, infestation is the first stage of demonic activity. It's all the flashy stuff, the spooky stuff. Your bangings and your voices and the knocking and stuff getting thrown and knocked over. All that kind of stuff happens mostly during that stage.
Mm-hmm. Okay. How difficult is it for you to establish infestation?
Difficulty depends on the situation. It kind of varies. Some cases, depending on how much activity is taking place, it can be really easy to figure it out. And some, it's a little bit more subtle. Most of the problem comes from by the time I get a phone call, it's already gone beyond the infestation stage. And so at that point, it's a whole new ballgame. But
very interesting. Now, Alex, how do you go in and establish this? I mean, is it something you typically determine over the phone, or is there a series or a process that you go through to help fortify your theory?
Generally, before I say anything is potentially demonic, I like to interview the client. Typically, that's a phone interview, and then we usually do a second interview, which is face-to-face, and I get a chance to sit down at home, observe the atmosphere and some of the activities taking place, go through the interview process, ask a bunch of very thorough questions, and then usually follow that up with an investigation if one is needed to figure out what's going on, if anything. And then we just go from there based on what we get from the client and what we observe.
Okay. Now, I want to give our listeners an opportunity to kind of understand your qualifications. Alex, how long have you been a demonologist?
I've been researching demonology for about 4 years, going on 5 years now, and handling cases at the same amount of time.
Okay. And where did you, and how did you procure your knowledge and your training?
Well, it came from a wide range of places. A lot of books. There's a lot of reading involved. Then, of course, I've done a lot of research, not only through the Bible and other religious textbooks, but also, like I said, through various books on the subject, online articles. I've recently been taking Bishop Long's demonology course as sort of a refresher and also to get some new information. So really, I just kind of pull in information from, the internet and books and the Bible. And then, of course, I go out and I get hands-on experience, which is another big part of learning.
Right. And so, in truth, I mean, I can attest that you're probably one of the more well-read individuals I've ever spoken to. And a lot of people don't realize that beyond NPS, we are friends in other aspects and work together on variable things. And I've always, just been kind of astounded at your thirst for knowledge and your objectivity. I've always respected that. Now, in demonology, huh?
Oh, I said thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. Now, on the subject of demonology, okay, what work are you most proud of? For yourself personally, or something that you admire?
That I've accomplished?
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of hard for me to answer. I don't like to take pride in the sense of I don't really count accomplishments.
Right.
I don't have like a trophy case or a list of cases that I see as the most amazing of my career and I did the most good, and I kind of just take each one as a learning experience, and I don't really have a list of personal achievements, so to speak.
Okay, well, let's rephrase the question. Okay, is there one case in particular where you learned more than many of the others, where you were proud of your knowledge or grateful to have such, or was it just that profound case that changed something for you?
I'm gonna have to say probably the most profound case that I ever worked on was the first case that I ever did that was demonic.
Mm-hmm.
That happened back in 2011.
Okay.
Essentially, I got approached by, I just started my research, or I was, still in the early stages of it. And I got approached by a random guy to come investigate his apartment. A whole bunch of just crazy stuff was going on, and that kind of really opened my eyes to the reality. And I wound up having to bring in extra help and friends and whatnot. And so I was kind of grateful for having a good network system in place where I can call people and they can help lend their experience.
Interesting. So that particular instance made everything much more real for you.
Yeah, I would say that one really opened my eyes a lot.
Okay, right on. Now, so do you have certain people in the demonology field that you really respect or you look up to, or that whose work you give credence to?
I would say people that I look up to or respect. I'm probably gonna have to say Mike McCaskill, Bishop Long. He's got a lot of knowledge and experience with dealing with demonic cases. That's pretty much it as far as people that I admire their work.
Okay, and they both, and if I'm correct, they both approach demonology from a very Christian standpoint, as do you, correct?
Yes. Yep.
Okay. Are there any other individuals that are important to you that are in any other religious sect, like Taoist, Asian, anything like that? I mean, they're any other foreign religion, not foreign, I'm sorry, any other variable religion, that there's someone out there doing a demonology study, that you look to their work and find substance in it too?
I find substance within a wide range of different faiths and their approach to the subject. As far as any particular individual by name, I can't think of any off the top of my head. I talk to a bunch of them, though, on a regular basis, and they all have very valid approaches to the subject.
Nice. Now, so what is the one thorn in your side about the entire study of demonology and the whole paranormal craze with it?
I would say the biggest thing that irritates me is people that they read one book or they get like a flimsy online certificate and they're suddenly expert demonologist, and they go out there and they present themselves as these master demonologists and stuff, and they wind up usually making the situation worse. And it makes legitimate demonologists' lives a little bit harder because we have to clean up their messes. So that kind of irritates me a little bit.
Absolutely. Now, I have a question here in the chat room from Penn Network, Mr. Eric. It said, how does one deal with non-Christian faith path, whether it's Wiccan and pagan, when it comes to dealing with demon or darker forces?
Well, it depends on how you define dealing with it, as far as getting rid of it or resolving the issue.
Why don't you go ahead and choose one and expound upon it for us?
I would say that if you're of a deferring faith and you have a situation like that and you're trying to resolve it, I would suggest working within your faith. If that's what you're drawn to, that's what you're connected to. So if you're Wiccan, work within your Wiccan faith to try and resolve the issue. You don't have to stray into other faiths to get the problem resolved. Right. If I have a client that is of a deferring faith, I will usually, if I can't give them the help that they need or want, I will usually go out of my way to help find them some kind of support that fits what they're looking for.
Now, doesn't the process ultimately defined by the client? I mean, if I'm if let's say, I'm Jewish and you come in with a Christian approach, is it going to be as effective for me in the long run as a client?
It really just depends on the person. I've had some clients in the past that are not Christian that are very open towards other faiths coming in and helping them, and it proved effective for them because they accepted it, they wanted it. If you have a client that is not comfortable with someone trying to use their faith to resolve a situation, then you have conflicting faiths, and it becomes ineffective, and it could make the situation worse over time.
Well, I'm certain by the time they get to you, with it being a demonic case, that they're pretty open to any kind of help they can get because hopefully they've exhausted all other avenues. Am I correct?
Yeah, most of them are very open at that point to just wanting it gone, whatever it takes. Some aren't. I've had a few small percentage that were very set that this is how they wanted it done, and so I've had to try and find them help from that area. But the majority are very open towards any help that they can get.
Fair enough. Now, what do you do in your spare time, Alex? Beyond being a demonologist and an NPS god, what do you do?
Do a lot of reading, a lot of seminary studies, college. I do a lot of hanging out with random friends, video game kind of guy. I like playing video games in my spare time. Get together and going fishing,
Nice. Okay, so what's the side of you that we never see in NPS or your demonology?
I would say you never, as far as demonology goes, you don't really see the more humorous side of me. Okay. I'm usually very serious about that subject, so I don't really do a whole lot of joking around, but outside of that particular subject, I'm usually a pretty random, laugh it up kind of guy.
Nice. Okay. When are you completely satisfied with your work?
When am I satisfied?
No, when have you ever been completely satisfied with the work that you've done?
I would say that complete satisfaction for me just comes from knowing that the client's issues have been resolved. When they stop experiencing things and everything goes back to normal and their life is better, for me, that I'm satisfied that I did everything I could do to help them and get the issue taken care of.
Now, how many times have you gotten to an investigation site and kind of come to the conclusion, without making a medical diagnosis, that it might be more emotionally based than actually spiritual based?
I've had that happen a few times. There was a couple that I had as clients one time that I had to recommend to see a marriage counselor. A lot of issues are coming from their constant fighting. I've had a couple other clients that have had all kinds of other emotional issues, such as abuse as children, just all around not a very good outlook on life. And so I've had a few cases where I've had to tell people that I can't really help them with that situation because it's not something that's demonic or spiritual, but it's more psychological or emotional.
Fair enough. Now, we are just, in the fringe sciences, how we're trying to blend spirituality with, physical and emotional issues. I think we are just grazing the surface of mental health issues and the possibility of them, being the cause of perceived paranormal activity, or having them be a perpetuant of spiritual activity. I know I've had personally, when I go in and I do my client interviews and things like that, I have noticed that I have more clients with PTSD having profound paranormal experiences than those that haven't been diagnosed. I'm not saying that those that haven't been diagnosed, aren't on that, in that category. But I wonder, I'm constantly wondering, I read an amazing book years back called Left Brain, Right Brain, and I would like to recommend it to anybody in the world about explaining, the functions and the chemical components of the brain. And I wonder, with some of those experiences, if it doesn't open up different neural pathways, depending on the flows of dopamine, serotonin, adrenaline, those types of situations, and with the demonic activity too, I wonder, if people that have experienced trauma are more susceptible to these things in a very legitimate sense, or if they're very susceptible to these things in a very unsubstantiated sense. And, that's part of the reason why, I am so excited about Endeavor launching. Hopefully that we can start establishing some of these baselines, so that, we can start giving credence and some kind of commonality to these experiences. Have you seen any patterns established in your clients and in your studies in demonology?
Yes, I think that in certain cases, certain psychological things like PTSD, for example, can leave you a bit more susceptible than the average person. I've had clients in the past that have had some form of PTSD, for example, that were deeply affected by demonic entities. And I think that a large part of that is because they leave this sort of emotional impact or emotional wound, and they kind of use it as a way to manipulate and work their way into someone's life.
Right. Well, that makes complete sense. You know what I mean? I wonder that if the traumatic stress or the traumatic experiences open them up or shut them down. You know what I mean? And there's opportunity and options. Excuse me, Navar. There are opportunities and options in both directions for that to be applicable. So, we're still in such a discovery phase, truly, because we have the legitimacy of some of these cases. We truly, truly do. And, when we go in there, research and investigate, document, even stuff that seems kind of odd or, unrelated. I mean, I think it's really going to start leading us to a path of discovery. What's been your most challenging role in the fringe sciences?
I have to say my most challenging goal has been trying to educate the general public on the differences between Hollywood demonology and reality. I've had a lot of investigators come to me with different cases that they claimed were, demonic, and they weren't. And a lot of people that don't know what something demonic really is, and they make general assumptions, and education becomes kind of challenging at that point.
Okay. Well, and I totally agree with that. One of the things I find most challenging on NPS is, every little blip, bling, bump, bruise is demonic. You know what I mean? If it's frightening someone, then automatically it's demonic. People aren't substantiated. You go now. I said hi. Later. Go ahead, Eric. Go ahead, Alex. I'm sorry, my children.
I have to agree with you. I see that a lot. Every picture's got a demon face in it. Every scratch is demonic. It gets kind of crazy. Especially on like the NPS page, you get about at least 10 people a day saying that they've experienced something demonic based off one thing that happened or what somebody else said, and it gets kind of annoying after a while.
Yeah, well, it's like, did you ever watch that movie, the Pixar movie, The Incredibles? If everyone or everything is special, then nothing is. People have made a demonic presence so familiar that it's in, a third grade classroom now. It's like, it's not the exception. It's almost, the rule. Personally, to me, it's really frustrating because that, really, it just kind of shows the unevolved mindset or the lack of effort really going into the investigation and research. And to me, this is where we have to push harder, and I'm the first one to jump in and say, what have you got to qualify as a theory for this to be demonic? Prove it, and honestly, the burden of proof does come down to the individual making the claim. It's not for you to say, I have a demon, and for me to go, oh, Mom, Miss Scarlet, where? No, it's for me to say, I think I have a demon, and this is why, and this is why, and this is why it's happened this many times, and this is a series of personal events that's happened, and my experiences. I've journaled it, I've documented it, and it's, not because some, lighting bug, flew up my nose. It's, it's because of an established series of events. And I think once we can start, training people to think like investigators and researchers, we can get everybody out of this, mindset that everything is paranormal. Personally, I think paranormal is rampant. I think some of the paranormal is a psychologist's dream. Here, look at this spot. What do you think it is? And that's how I feel part of the time on the page. What do you think this is? Well, what do you think it is? yourself, kind of. I certainly don't see a demon in the toaster or in somebody's daughter's hair back here or anything like that. I look for simple, solvable solutions, for explaining things. And it's when I can't find one of those things, I get really excited about the opportunity that can be in front of us. So what does that mean? That means more questions. That means, more objectivity. That means more subjectivity. It just means more work. And I do truly believe that it's out there. It's the needle in the haystack. It's not all the straw pieces in the haystack. It's the needle. It's there, and it's obtainable. It's just going to take a collective force of work to discover. Your second article that you submitted, on this week was about oppression. Can you tell me a little bit more about that?
Well, oppression is a bit more. Well, it's the second stage of demonic activity. There's three: the infestation, oppression, and possession. Oppression is a little bit more common than possession, and it's a bit more focused on an individual at that level. At that point, it's become an attachment, and it's working with the person's weaknesses and fears and habits, and trying to get them to kind of go down a more destructive path as they further the ultimate goal of gaining possession of that individual.
Okay. And then finally, about possession. Can you please tell us about that?
Yeah, that one it's a bit more rare than the other two stages. It's also, in my opinion, probably the most dangerous of the three. That's where the individual that was oppressed has now become possessed. The demon has put them in a position to where they can take control. There's two types of possession. There's transient possession and full possession. Transient is where the demon pops in and out. It's not there constantly controlling the person. And then full possession, it's there constantly in control of that person. And at that point, that is where clergy should get involved. It needs to be an exorcism. Because a lot of the time, the demons will attempt to kill the individuals that they possess, often through suicide.
Okay. And do you believe that some of these people are functioning on undiagnosed medical or mental illness, and that's how this is, how the possessions are feasible or possible? Or do you think it's just somebody with a degraded sense of spiritualism and self?
Some cases of possession are mistaken as mental illnesses, and the vice versa is true. There's a lot of times that mental illness is mistaken for possession, and it's why psychological exams are so important and highly encouraged when it comes to trying to determine whether someone was possessed, because you have to be very careful. You don't want to accidentally harm somebody who is not possessed but suffering from mental illness.
Absolutely. There's been several posts in the last 30 days that I've seen about possession and whatnot, where the individual goes to list numerous traits of, profound mental illnesses like schizophrenia. We had one lady that posted something about taking Seroquel. And Seroquel's it's a pretty stiff psychotropic antipsychotic med, and I know about those being prescribed for people with schizophrenia because I have dealt firsthand with someone with schizophrenia, and we lost him. He killed himself. It's not a lightly taken thing. And I think a lot of members get very offended, when the first thing I do is recommend that they make sure that they clarify with their, physician, and they can eliminate some things. I don't think if somebody told me that, a demon was reaching in their chest and they could feel it, skipping beats, would I not send them to, would I not recommend they go to a cardiologist first? Yes. Let's see if, your heart's really having palpitations. Well, somebody's really having, episodes where, psychotic episodes, seriously psychotic episodes, hearing other things speak to them, being afraid to go outside, some of it's not profound, some of it is profound. But it's my stance where I believe in safety first, up front and right away. Before our members start suggesting to take a supernatural approach, it's just a law of progression. You know what I mean? Eliminate what it could possibly be, and if it still remains, then there we stand. And secondarily, just out of a legal standpoint, I mean, I take a great amount of responsibility for the members posting something where they might be in some kind of physical or mental danger. And for us not to address that first, I believe is not only tragic, but shameful, When somebody today was talking about, a friend who claimed to have been raped while she was sleeping. Well, you know, there could have been many components of that prior to somebody saying, oh, it's demonic. And, of course, that was one of the first comments, you know, it was a succubus or incubus. You know, and that could be being drugged from an outside source, you know, Rufinol, you know, Barbital, anything like that. And that could secondarily come from sleep apnea, night terrors, which, you know, could truly eventually compromise somebody's health and safety. And we're talking, too, about somebody believing that a felonious crime was committed against them. You know, we have to remember that we're researchers and investigators. We're not doctors and we're not police. And that if my sister or my brother or my dad or, you know, my mother or my child was looking for advice outside of something that they would get from their common circle, that someone would give them something with some common sense to it first, and then look to a spiritual nature second. I mean, you know, a CBC, a complete blood count, can do tox screens for a lot of stuff. And once that's ruled out, then move forward immediately. Absolutely. But God, make sure it's something not life-threatening. You know, and that's, again, I guess from, you know, my maternal instincts and, you know, from a legal standpoint with NPS is kind of where I come from. Probably the very last thing I ever come down to is it demonic, you know, because I know people react, you know, very quickly to being frightened. Even if it's, you know, a benign entity, you know, possibly a very mild haunting, things they can't explain. Suddenly their mind gets into it, and then all of a sudden, you know, it's Paranormal Activity 4, and, you know, they're waiting for somebody to levitate. and all of that, and all that inner turmoil builds up so big that before we can determine that they've got a rodent infestation, they're sure that the Dark Lord is there to take their soul, you know? And for me, it would, you know, it would be good for me if people were just a smidge more patient and rational.
That's kind of the same approach I take on cases, as I never go in there with the automatic assumption that something is or isn't demonic. Very rarely will it ever happen. Mostly I go in there as kind of a skeptic. I like to get a look at what's going on and hear the complaints, and you know, I think that saves a lot of trouble if you know, compared to just walking in there and saying it's demonic, and it may not even be anything paranormal at all.
Mm-hmm. There was something on Facebook the other day about a group having a woman down south so frightened about an infestation in her house, they frightened the client out of staying in her own home. They had the woman terrified, and it all came down to being absolutely nothing. I mean, I would think, in a way, there'd be some illegal repercussion for, you know, harassment or emotional abuse. I mean, I don't think people take into consideration what we're doing out there we can be held legally liable for, no matter what the client signs. Because if they sign it and they're under duress, which they are under duress, if they're going to have you out at their house for a haunting, they're afraid something's going on, that nullifies any kind of, you know, hold harmless agreement that anybody may have them sign. The contract's invalidated, and, you know, the leader of the group or whomever's there is financially liable for, you know, a civil suit. And that's something, you know, we need to communicate to you while showing up at people's doorsteps, you know, with a digital audio recorder and your phone, taking pictures with a flashlight on your head does not make you a paranormal investigator. What it does make you is legally liable for stepping into that person's house and causing emotional duress. So you need to go in there professional with your ducks in a row, and with some actual intent of following through. I think that's probably one of the biggest, you know, failures of teams that go out there is there's no follow through. There's no follow up. They go in, yeah, you got an entity, you know. It's a 65-year-old man who died of influenza, blah, 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 blah. They have no proof. You know, they don't offer anything to the client concrete, and what they're doing is just perpetuating a fantasy. So, you know, and I appreciate what you do. We have a question in the chat room from Hank, and he would like to know if you would promote the study of demonology for investigators.
I would say that probably a really good idea to at least understand some of the signs and symptoms of the three stages of activity, just so you as the investigator can be aware of what's going on. If you do present, you know how to respond to that, and you're not caught off guard, kind of, lost, trying to figure out what to do next because something's completely unexpected that you never learned before. It just happened to you.
Right. Okay. So now, what do you do to relax, Alex?
A couple things. I do meditations, rosary. I recite that. Sometimes I will just put on some classical music or kind of new agey style music and just relax and read a book or something. Even just go fishing and hanging out with friends is a good time just to relax and not really worry about it.
Nice. Now, you are getting ready to, I don't know if you did this today, I'm kind of thinking you did, deliverance versus exorcism. Can you please tell us the differentiation?
Well, deliverance is very often confused with exorcisms, and they are two separate things. Deliverance is more or less prayer and spiritual guidance for those that are oppressed. Prayer support that often comes from a group is to help push that demonic entity out of that person's life and help them get through that situation. And then, of course, the spiritual guidance is to help them live a better life and get away from what caused the oppression in the first place. Right. And that is completely different than a possession. If you use deliverance prayer to possess person, often the possessed person will become very violent towards the ones that are doing the deliverance. And all it really does is provoke and enrage. Okay. Exorcism is a ritual that is specifically for getting rid of demonic entities that are possessing somebody, pulling them out and getting rid of them. So it is different from deliverance.
Okay. Now, do you believe people with a stronger spiritual foundation have less chance of, demonic, infestation than others?
I would say that, in my opinion, based on my experience, demons are things of opportunity. They generally want to take on people that are weaker or have less chance of putting up resistance to them. So if you are somebody that is very, very set in your faith, you're very devout, you don't really give them any sort of doorway, then chances are they're going to, for the most part, pass you up just because they know that you're not an easy target. You're not somebody that's an opportune target.
Okay. Now, you had mentioned before, and in your itinerary for this week's information that you're going to pass out is the importance of psychological exams. Can you explain that to me a little better and maybe in some further detail?
It kind of goes along with what we were talking about earlier. I mean, there are many different mental illnesses out there that can give you the illusion that someone is possessed, such as schizophrenia, for example. Psychosis, and a whole bunch of others can give you the impression that someone is possessed by some sort of inhuman entity. So it's very important for their safety and well-being that if you are trying to diagnose a demonic situation, that they be given a psychological exam so that you don't harm them. And most priests and clergy in general will not perform an exorcism unless the person that it's being performed on has already taken a psychological exam for that very reason. They want to make sure that it's demonic and it's not mental illness, and they don't want to cause any harm to that person.
Nice. Well, because I know that there's a lot of conflict and speculation that, like, with the exorcism of that Annalise girl, that she had a profound mental illness, and that the diocese made it more difficult or worse. So I mean, I understand too the legal aspects of all that too, and we're sue happy today in the United States, you know, friends. I mean, people say it's, you know, a demonic infestation. I'm telling you what, if somebody comes in your home and says there's demonic infestation and they can't prove to you that they got it out, you know, there'd be lawsuits. You know what I mean? For, again, emotional duress. I mean, and I always kind of try to look at it from a legal standpoint. You know, somebody showed up, you know, I called somebody because something was going thump in the night, and they come to my house and tell me I had a demonic infestation. I would hand them my 13-year-old daughter and tell them problem solved, you know. What we're not doing is our due diligence. And, you know, some of these teams and people out there, you know, just preying upon the weak and charging thousands of dollars. And this is where I really get my knickers in a wad. Charging people seriously? I have a real personal issue with that.
Yeah, I don't agree with the idea of charging somebody for deliverance or exorcisms or really charge them at all to help them. I think that people that come up with these excuses to find a way to justify what they're doing are morally wrong for what they're doing.
Yeah, no, you know, and I have to admit, you know, we've gone out on investigations where people have, like, insisted on giving us money, and, you know, we refuse and have them donate to the local animal shelter. You know, what we do is a labor of love. You know what I mean? It really is. And I guess for me, it goes beyond that. It's just a morbid curiosity. I gotta know if there's a basis for my personal experiences, you know, and I have never come across anything that has scared me so bad is that I would label it demonic. And I've had some pretty profound experiences. And I guess maybe because I'm a little harder to disjoint. And I think that's partially proportional to my personal experiences, you know what I mean? And not just in the paranormal, but, you know, what I've been through in my life. You know, I don't have a dark fear in my spiritual sense. You know, I'm very comfortable with that. I know where I'm going, and I know what's going to happen when I'm done here. What I'm trying to do, I guess, through the paranormal is, you know, help prove that it and establish, you know, that there's something beyond what we see here. What has been your most challenging role in the paranormal? Has it been your demonology hat?
I would say, yeah, that would be my most challenging role. I kind of explained an analogy of, you know, the average investigator probably won't see that many demonic cases, maybe one if they're unlucky enough to come across that, you know, their career. It's kind of like being a homicide cop. You know, a homicide cop is going to see, a homicide detective is going to see more murders than a traffic investigator, because that's what their specialty is.
Right.
And so as a human knowledge, that's all I really take cases on, so I see more of them.
Right. Now, there's another question in the chat room asking how involved is it, how difficult is it to actually get the Catholic Church involved in a supposed demonic case?
Well, it depends on what type of Catholic Church you're talking about. There's all kinds of different Catholics out there.
Right.
The Roman Catholics are very hard to get involved for the most part. There's a lot of red tape. Your more independent Catholics, your old Catholics, Orthodox, they can sometimes be a lot more easier to work with when it comes to demonic cases. There's not as much red tape compared to the Roman Catholic Church.
Okay. So we have another question. You have another document coming that says no means no. Can you expound upon that?
Well, it's really a simple principle of, you know, again, going back to our earlier discussion, if you are a Jewish client and I'm a Catholic and you say, no, I don't want Christian help, I want Jewish help, I cannot force my spiritual help upon that particular individual. It won't be effective, and it could make the situation worse. So when it comes to working with clients, if they say no to your help or no to what you suggest or no to what you present as what you say is evidence is going on, then you have to respect their free will to say that, and you have to respect their decisions.
Fair enough. I like that point very much. Okay, and then the last documents you're going to be turning in, submission for Demonology Week, is going to be ways to open doors. Can you talk to us about that?
Yeah, there's we call them doors. Essentially, it's ways for demonic influence or demonic entities to enter into a home or someone's life. Some of the more common ways would be Ouija boards, dabbling in the occult, especially the darker side, doing summoning rituals when you have no training or any idea what you're doing, trying to catch people, drugs, alcohol addiction, illegal activities such as prostitution and stealing and things like that. All can be potential open doors for demonic influence or activity.
So, I have kind of a different take on the Ouija boards and things like that. I don't believe that they're demonic or bad. I believe that the individual's intent makes them the conduit for whatever passes through. I think it's the same way with the pendulum and doing any kind of seance situation, even if it's with a digital audio recorder. I believe it is the individual's spiritual capacity, their current fortitude, and what their intents truly are. I believe that that negative begets negative. I've said for a very long time, Hasbro, again, we're so happy. Hasbro wouldn't be allowed to mass produce these things if they were the problem. I think the people using them are the problem, because I don't think that they're grounded. I don't think they're educated. I think they're thrill seeking. I think they're looking for answers out of guilt. And I have to be the first one. I had a real process when my mom passed away. And I had to give myself the opportunity to grieve in a healthy way instead of saying, God, is she trying to contact me? I needed to go and separate my paranormal studies from the loss of my mother. And, it wasn't an easy thing, but I think we have gotten many tools that people are utilizing now to bring things through. Not like how you said with drugs, they shut down that part of your brain. When people go to use things like Ouija board and whatnot, they open a different part of themselves, almost trance-like. You know what I mean? They intentionally go clear and try to touch something else. Well, I think what's allowed to pass through is precisely, what's good or bad in them. And sometimes the negative outweighs the good. There are very few balanced people. And I mean truly balanced people that I've ever met. There's somebody that's angry or hurt about something, and anger and fear and hate is very powerful. Very powerful. And I think, whatever's the most powerful in you is what's going to be attracted. When you're in the dark and you light a candle, moths are drawn to the flames, and I kind of think that's what happens when people put themselves in those kind of, spiritual positions, whether, no matter who they're trying to contact. I believe that we don't know how to control it, so we can't control what comes in or out. I don't believe it's any particular way that it gets in or out. And I believe that it's, a completely sociological situation, where you place your mind. And, we have people in the chat room saying it just balances a tipped over suspicious cup of cranberry juice. It was cranberry juice, folks. So now, Alex, as far as NPS goes, you've been our demonology chair and our occult chair and our senior director and 100 other hats you wore. You've been, my shoulder to lean on, my mentor. You and I have been at it since actually I took the executive director's position. What have you seen as the biggest changes in trends with demonology since you started in NPS to this point?
When I started out in NPS, there were a lot less actually educated people in NPS that had knowledge on demonology. There's a lot more people that didn't really know what they were talking about. And, there's a couple individuals that, stood out, and it still stand out in my mind as people that kind of put other people in danger. And as NPS has grown to the point where it's at now, we're seeing more and more people come in and have more actual knowledge of the subject. And so there's a lot less misinformed and uneducated people running around trying to tell other people what to do.
Do you think a lot of it is, intended education, or do you think it's persuasion through fear-mongering?
As far as the uneducated telling other people to do?
Mm-hmm. Well, on the page, I don't see many people, you come from, a theological point. I mean, and, since I know you, aside from NPS, I know that you have a very well-rounded version and an education in many different theological studies. You know about pagans and Wiccans and Druids and all sorts of different things, and different pantheons and whatnot. And it seems like you take the time to step back and assess it all, and form an opinion. Where there's a lot of people just reacting out of the religion of their childhood, hell and damnation and fire and brimstone, and no real understanding of any of it. And that's one of the things I truly respect about you, is that you are so objective. So with NPS, I remember, we had like 600-700 members. The word demon wasn't used a ton, but when it was, holy God, it went crazy. And now, you have a picture, the picture that somebody took of their child, and you could see right back here, it was hair fibers, but it looked demonic. Well, how is her hair demonic? I mean, I didn't understand that. I don't see, demons in cement. I don't see them in leaf structures. I don't see them in the trunk of a tree. I don't see them in toast. I do not see them in a car tire, and I don't see them in hair. I think we're reaching. I think, making very uneducated assumptions. And, with that, takes us to a very amateurish level. Personally, that's... Go ahead.
I was going to say, I think a lot of it has to do more with fear. Recently we had a whole bunch of movies come out, like the Paranormal Activity movies, the Insidious movies, The Conjuring, all these different movies coming out to talk about, demons and demonic activity. And I think for a lot of people that come to NPS with the photos and things like that are convinced that there's something evil there, is more or less fear. And it's kind of a knee-jerk reaction. And I think a lot of it has to do with their everyday influences. This is what they believe is demonic based on these movies and TV shows. And so that's what they put forth. Right,
yeah. I think a ton of it has to do with, their personal psychological background. In their spiritual path. If somebody's got a healthy, balanced path, you don't see them finding the negative constantly. And there's some who jump on the page and that's all they see is something diabolical and negative. And it's very hard to encourage that balance, between the spirituality and the science, because they're going to have to meet somewhere. And I know that it's a constant effort on the reps' parts and many of the dedicated members' parts, and I believe it can be found. I just think we have to look a little deeper. And then I believe that the media has done us a complete disservice by the way, they portray what we do. Like I've said 100 times, God loves Zach Baggins. He does something great for his t-shirts, but, he's not stopped by succubi all the time. And he makes $20,000 an episode as an executive producer, and he's listed as an actor on the internet. They all are, because you and I and every other investigator who's been in the field and done this genuinely and diligently know that not every place is a home run. Not every investigation is a capture. And it's certainly not, those TV shows certainly aren't going to be surviving the ratings wars without some form of entertainment. And I think it's, like I said, I think it's done a complete disservice. I'm not sure which one, Grant and, what's his name? Grant and,
Jason Haas.
Jason Haas are on. They're very credible, nice men. But that doesn't mean that there's always a capture, folks. You know what I mean? It's money, it's business, it's income, and it's Hollywood. I can't stress that enough. It's not that they're not great, genuine guys. It just kind of
the TV show entertainment. I remember when Ghost Hunters first came out on Sci-Fi, and I remember when Ghost Hunters came out and all that stuff. And usually, it seems to be the first couple of seasons are legitimate, that they're actually trying to be credible investigators. And usually about the third season, they get that memo from the Discovery Channel or the Sci-Fi that said you need to start entertaining us and giving us more, or we're going to cut your show. And that's where a lot of the fake stuff comes into play. So I think that anybody watching paranormal TV shows or movies in general needs to keep in mind that this is investigation entertainment. It's not real investigations. It's meant to entertain you, and it's meant to kind of be thrilling and exciting, but it's not meant to be reality. When they made The Conjuring, they were not trying to teach you how to be a demonologist. They were just trying to give you a movie that scared the crap out of you based on a true story.
Right. Absolutely.
And people lose sight of that.
Right. Sci-fi. I love Sci-Fi Channel too. It's one of my favorites. That and History Channel, and I like anything educational and informative. And I'm not so much into the horror movies. They're just I just don't get it anymore. Maybe when I was younger. I guess I'm just getting old. Alex, it has been really wonderful having you here this evening. And, Sherry was very sorry she couldn't be here. She had stuff to do with her sweet little girl and her other half Deegan. And I'd like to thank the members that are in the chat room. You guys are wonderful. Like always, thank you, Hank. Thank you, Ashley. Thank you for coming, Deb. And everybody else, we really, really, really appreciate it. Eric Reisinger for facilitating us all the time like he does. We're running down to the last few minutes here. Does anyone in the chat room have another good question for us that I can throw at Alex real quick? Anything. Whether he has cats, dogs, ask him something personal. Not something too creepy though, y'all. All right. So we have a moment to thank our sponsors. NPS Focus is brought to you by the National Paranormal Society. You can visit us on our website at www.national-paranormal-society.org. Also, you can come visit us on our Facebook page. We've got about 45,000 plus members, and we're still growing. We're getting ready to launch the Endeavor Project, which will be announced very soon. It's going to be epic, and it's going to take over the entire paranormal community. Alex, one last quick question. Would you be willing to film a demonology class?
I would not be opposed to that idea.
Okay, well, it seems that Hank Porter is very interested in that idea. Maybe we could facilitate something like that, like do Demonology 101, start doing some education so some of our seasoned investigators can get a better idea of what to look for. I think it'd be a great idea. And another sponsor we would like to thank would be Blessed Bee. It's the one-stop occult shop, and just in case anybody doesn't know it, the proprietors are Alex and myself. You can visit us at www.blessedbbe.cc. All sorts of neat stuff. Sage, chakra wands, and if you can't find something on the store site that you really want or need, you give Alex and I a PM real quick, and we'll respond and find it for you. Alex, anything else you'd like to state before we wrap it up?
Not really, just thanks for having me on the show. I enjoyed it.
Oh, it's wonderful. It's always great having you. You're always a blessing. All right, folks. Well, if we janitorial supplies and cleanups, Hank's in there talking about, his orb busters when he goes to investigation sites. Quite the character he is. We'd like to thank everybody for showing up. We had a great night tonight.